So we have 4 levels of grammar. We're going to focus on grammars 1 and 2 in this seminar here, but 4 levels. You can see the same information in even more detail online. But just to sort of outline it, grammar 1 is the beginner level. It's really, we start from fundamentals, so we don't assume any prior knowledge of grammar for grammar 1. So objective there is to really learn the 8 parts of speech to get just a vocabulary for talking about grammar, right? And we emphasize the verb tenses. So there are many complex verb tenses in English, and we get you working on those really early in grammar 1. Grammar 2 moves straight on from grammar 1, so it picks off right where it left off. And we sort of move 1 level up, right? We have these this vocabulary, we have these ideas of what words do, and now we can combine them into phrases, right? So we give an understanding of phrases, and we introduce students to clauses in grammar 2 as well. So moving on to this sort of sentential level with grammar 2, but it's just sort of 1 level up. Grammar 3 is advanced grammar. It goes a bit more quickly than either grammar 1 or grammar 2, and it begins with clauses, right? And so now we're working with really putting whole sentences together, and it's geared more towards writing essays. You know, we begin to think more about those essays in grammar 3. We care a lot about punctuation in grammar 3. And then grammar 4 is really the advanced grammar and then style. So in grammar 4, we sort of move on to this idea of clarity in writing, right? It's no longer all about choosing the best grammatical statement, but it's, or the only grammatical statement, but now it's choosing the best statement, again, to sort of get what you want across in the best way. But that is really the advanced one. Grammars 1 and 2, again, we're going to focus on those for now. And this has been sort of a written down way of looking at what each of these classes teaches. Let's take another view at it. We can take a look at what these classes teach by looking at this one sentence. So this is a good English sentence. Although the boy in the store is very nice, he has given him no money, right? This is a grammatical sentence. This is perfectly good. Now, if I were to look at this sentence in a grammar 1 class, right, the first level, grammar 1, I would take a look at this and I would point out the different words in the sentence, right? So we have an article. The is an article. It's a special type of adjective. We have prepositions. We know what those do. We know the different types of verbs in grammar 1, right? So a linking verb. We know what an adverb is and what it modifies, right? Pronouns. We talk about pronouns. And again, those verb tenses are important. So we talk about figuring out what tense verbs are in, right? Nouns. So that's grammar 1. We're looking at the words and what they do. If we look at the same sentence in a grammar 2 class, we might take a look at it and say, well, hey, look, here we have some phrases, right? So we have a noun phrase. The boy is a noun phrase, right? It's boy is a noun plus its modifier, right? We have noun phrases. We have prepositional phrases. And we talk in grammar 2 about what those do, right? They can act as adjectives. We have prepositional phrases. We have adjective phrases, right? And then we introduce the idea of clauses as well, right? So we in grammar 2 can say that this is an indicative clause, an independent clause in the indicative mood, things like that, right? Another noun phrase there. So that's grammar 2, sort of 1 level up again. Grammar 3 would take a look at the sentence and say, well, look, here is a special type of clause, right? And we know that this is the clause that we have. It's a dependent, so we need a comma at the end, right? We know that it begins with this special weird type of conjunction, right? So this is more advanced stuff again, right? We're at the higher level of clauses. More special types of sentential roles there, right? So we're talking at that level in grammar 3 and the sentential roles. Grammar 4 would take a look at the sentence and say, well, how could we make this better? How could we make this more effective or more clear? Well, could this be less general, right? The store. What store? Could we say, Target? Could we say some specific store? Could we say, could we change something so that it's less cliche, right? Reword very nice and change that to make it less cliche. Can we make it less ambiguous, right? These pronouns are ambiguous, so could we make that less ambiguous, right? So fixing sort of stylistic problems, that's the realm of grammar 4. And again, it's sort of once we've mastered everything else. So that is sort of the view of what each of these classes does. But again, we're going to just jump back to Grammar 1 and Grammar 2 and go even more in depth into those. So here we have the list of class topics for Grammars 1 and 2. Now, this is not every single class enumerated. Some of these topics we use more than one class to go over them, but these are the topics. So you can see in Grammar 1, our classes look like we talk about nouns, we talk about, we take, again, some time to do the verb tenses because those are important, but we talk about pronouns, adjectives, adverbs, right? So that's really the fundamentals in Grammar 1. Grammar 2, the classes look like advanced pronouns, right? So more specific types of those words, pronouns, more specific types of verbs with the modal verbs. We get into punctuation with apostrophes. And then phrases is really the big one with Grammar 2. That will guide everything that we do in that class. And then we talk about grammatical roles, so subjects and objects, and we sort of end with the introduction to clauses in Grammar 2. So those are sort of the lists of topics that we cover in these classes. And what does a class actually look like, right? In a class, in a Grammar 1 class, what are we doing? Well, I can give you an example of a class that discussion that we might have about verb tenses in Grammar 1. Again, I keep stressing this because it's really important. Verb tenses are crazy, but they're kind of cool. So what is a verb tense, right? If we think of it in the simplest terms, well, the tense, every verb has a tense, and it tells us when the verb happened, right? When the action in the clause happened. So if I'm talking in the present tense, then the action is happening right now, and if I want to say that something happened before the current time, I can just use the past tense. That's pretty simple, the simple past tense. It gets a bit more complex when we introduce a narration that is already in the past, right? So what if I were telling a story that happened in the past, and I want to talk about an event that happened even further in the past, right? Even further in the past. So this is where the past perfect tense comes in. So this is a sample lesson on the past perfect tense. So in this situation, let me show you an example of how I might get this information across, right? So I'm telling a story, it's in the past. So we have something like, Dad got back and found the door locked, right? So this is simple past tense. It's orange, so you can see it's right, the narration of the story there. Dad got back, he found the door locked. That's past tense. The door was locked because, and then I want to introduce something that happened even further in the past, right? Because Tom had run to the store to get some ice cream. So we have the event had run to the store. Had run is the past perfect tense. And of course, in class, we will talk in detail about how we form those tenses. But this is why we might need that tense, that past perfect tense, to introduce something that happened even further in the past than something else you're talking about. And it really gets across clearly that cause and effect relationship, right? So we care about how to form these tenses, but we also care about why we even need them in the first place, right? So that's a sample lesson from Grammar 1, the discussion we have in class. Grammar 2, I've been talking about phrases a lot, so we really care about phrases in Grammar 2. So something that we tackle in class in Grammar 2 is this idea of some of the crazy cool things we can do with phrases, so embedded phrases. There are many types of phrases in grammar. Grammar 2 first introduces the most basic type, which is a noun phrase. So the big wooden boat is a noun phrase. I'll call it an NP, a noun phrase. And it's just a noun, in this case, boat, including all of its modifiers, right? So the, big, and wooden, those are all adjectives modifying that noun boat. That makes a noun phrase. And students will often wonder, well, why do I have to know that that's a noun phrase? Why does that matter? Well, one reason it matters is because a noun phrase is part of the definition. It allows us to introduce the concept of another phrase, of a prepositional phrase, right? So a prepositional phrase is simply a preposition followed by a noun phrase. So of the big wooden boat, we now have a bigger phrase that has another phrase, right? The big wooden boat is embedded inside that prepositional phrase, right? Of the big wooden boat, it's now a bigger phrase. So that's pretty cool. What's even cooler is we can keep doing that, right? So I can say the top of the big wooden boat, right? Now I have a bigger noun phrase that contains the other two. and these each uniquely identify one sort of part of the sentence. We can keep going. On the top of the big wooden boat, right? So we have 4 phrases embedded within each other. And then we can even go further. The pig on the top of the big wooden boat, right? So we can keep going and adding these phrases until we have a sentence, right? And we can of course make a sentence by adding in a verb. We need a verb for a sentence, right? So all of these embedded phrases come together, and in Grammar 2, we really care about identifying those particular constituents, right? And that's what phrases do. So that's something we talk about in Grammar 2, and many sort of fun examples like that sentence as well.
Awesome. Just drop in quickly here. Can somebody write constituents in the chat?
Aha.
Yeah. Add to
Constituents.
your vocabulary.
Yes.
Sorry that we use words like these.
Right.
Well,
So that's sort of how these look. In general, how can you expect a grammar class to look? Well, it's very similar to other classes in EWC. We have our daily handouts that students will follow along with. They have notes with blanks in them, so we'll be filling in the notes together, filling in the blanks together, actively participating, and it's drill-based with Grammar 1 and 2. So we really care about getting a lot of practice with those parts of speech, etc. There is a placement exam for grammar on our website. If you want to take a grammar class, but you're not sure which one, you can take that placement exam. You can take a look at that detailed information about what is taught in grammar, and that will help you figure out what's best for you.